Welcome back to 28 Storms. This is your update for Saturday, August 13th. The latest outlook from the National Hurricane Center continues to indicate that the tropical Atlantic is becoming more active with time. We now have Tropical Storm Franklin, but that system is the one that we knew would go out to sea, so we're not too terribly concerned about that one. Now, we still have two highlighted areas in orange, and those are Invest 92 and Invest 94. Both of those have some chance of directly impacting Bermuda, so interest there should be on the lookout for those two, although we do not expect either one to become overly strong. And finally, we still have formerly Invest 93L located in the Central Atlantic. The probabilities for development have decreased to 10%, but that is only for the next 48 hours. And even though technically 93L has been deactivated, I still think that could be the primary player to watch down the road, especially once it gets into the Central and Western Caribbean. Tropical Storm Franklin only has maximum sustained winds of 45 miles per hour. It's moving off toward the east-northeast at 22 miles per hour and should stay well to the south and east of the Canadian Maritimes. This is also confirmed by all the available model guidance. You can see that several of the models do take this off toward the Azores Islands toward the end of the medium range. However, this will be extra tropical by the time it reaches them. Tropical Storm Franklin is located so far to the north that we had to switch over to the eastern U.S. sector to be able to find it on the latest visible. As you can see, much of the convection is displaced to the northeast of the low-level center, and we can also see that on the latest infrared. And Tropical Storm Franklin will have a relatively short life cycle. If we turn on the latest sea surface temperatures, you can see that it's closely or quickly approaching the 23 degrees Celsius isotherm, and we have a lot of westerly shear and dry air approaching from the west. So the storm is moving into cooler water temperatures, and the upper level environment just isn't that favorable, so this should dissipate fairly quickly. If we turn toward the south, we see that much of the Gulf, Caribbean, and West Atlantic are quiet, although we do have a small tropical disturbance passing just to the north of Bermuda today, and it's forming along the southern end of the mid to upper level trough, much like Tropical Storm Franklin did. However, it's not being mentioned by the National Hurricane Center. It's fairly weak, and it will be moving away from Bermuda later today, so that's really not much of a concern. Here's Invest 92. This is Invest 94. Currently, Invest 94 looks a little bit better organized. However, that low-level center is still fairly weak and exposed toward the west. And if we turn to the latest infrared, we don't see much in the way of significant convection just yet. In fact, 92 is packing just a little bit more thunderstorm activity. And also, if we look at the latest water vapor imagery, we can see that there is a very weak mid to upper level disturbance located just to the west of 94 that must be inhibiting development to some extent. And in fact, several models are showing Invest 92 and Invest 94 coming together over the next 24 to 36 hours. So this whole entire area will have to be closely monitored. There is some chance that we get a tropical depression or even tropical storm out of this as it heads off in the general direction of Bermuda. Also, if we look down toward the south, this is what's left of 93L Invest. If we go back to the latest infrared and the visible imagery, we can see that there's really not that much in the way of shower activity associated with 93 at all today. And that's if, once again, if we go back to the latest water vapor, we see there's a lot of dry air both to the north and immediately to the west of our system. But that's not to say that this won't have a chance as it gets into more favorable conditions down the road into the central and western Caribbean. And as I will soon show you, there are several models that still would like to at least hint at the possibility for development in the 4 to 5 and even 6 to 7 days time frame. The latest tropical model plots for both 94L Invest and 92L Invest indicate that both systems should pass close or directly over Bermuda over the next few days. However, once again, there is that chance that both of these merge into one primary system. The latest tropical model plots for Invest 93L continue to trend more toward the west. I'm not concerned about a more northerly track as being advertised by some of the BAM models by taking this ever so gradually to the north of the Virgin Islands and Puerto Rico. That is a highly unlikely solution as this system is remaining generally weak over the next 3 to even 5 days, and it's well embedded within the low-level steering flow that's dominated by the easterly winds to the south of the Azores High. So this is going to pass through the Lesser Antilles more than likely as nothing more than a very weak tropical wave. And then once it gets to the south of Hispaniola, and especially once it begins to approach Jamaica, that's when we'll really have to begin monitoring this for the potential for some development once again. As stated before, the main inhibitor for 93L today is all of the dry air surrounding it, but the upper level winds are very favorable, and several of the model members are indicating that the Caribbean will also be fairly favorable once the system begins to move into that area. So we are now going to take a look at the latest 12Z GFS. This run just finished within the last 30 minutes. This is starting off at 72 hours, and here's our tropical system beginning to pass through the Lesser Antilles as nothing more than a tropical wave. But as we go into the future, and especially as we get closer to around the day 6 time frame, if we back this up just one more, this is now early Friday morning, and we have an organizing area of low pressure to the south of Jamaica. In fact, this could also be considered a tropical depression or a tropical storm for dynamical model standards. And if we look at the mid to upper level forecast pattern for the same time period, we see that there is a fairly deep trough beginning to deepen here to the east of our tropical system, and that's going to enhance the ridging over the central Caribbean, especially to the south of Hispaniola and to the east of Jamaica, which is a fairly favorable setup. And also there are some hints of a very weak upper level low located just to the west, and if that little weak upper level feature remains out ahead of the system, then that could also induce some strengthening as well. So if we go beyond day 6, just for entertainment purposes, we see that the GFS continues to develop this system into what could also be considered a minimal hurricane by this point, and this is getting into the second half of next weekend, and eventually our system makes it into the central Gulf of Mexico, but that is really far in advance. We're talking about a 9 to 10 day forecast. Now, this wouldn't be the first time that the GFS incorrectly shows development. In fact, if we go ahead and just remember what we saw a few days ago, the GFS was trying to develop 93 into a potent tropical cyclone before even reaching the Lesser Antilles. And also, the European was not very aggressive on developing the system, so the European won the battle. But this time around, I am a little bit extra confident because both the European and GFS are showing potential development. This is the latest 0Z European run from the overnight hours, and it correctly shows not a whole lot associated with 92 anymore. You can't even really pick it up here. But if we go into the 24, 48, and 72 hour span, we see that the tropical system begins to make a bit of a comeback. By day 4 and day 5, we see that the system is beginning to become a little bit reinvigorated here as it passes safely to the south of Puerto Rico, and things become a bit more interesting as we get into day 6, 7, and 8. Sure enough, we still have that vorticity max well to the south of Cuba, so this is in fairly good track agreement with the latest GFS solution. And by day 9 and day 10, we still are tracking that system for potential development, and for the second run in the row, it's taking it toward the northern half of the Yucatan Peninsula. And then it also even has a second tropical wave beginning to come through the Caribbean by the same period. The 0Z CMC run was also indicating the potential for a tropical depression or tropical storm to the south of Cuba by day 6. The latest 12Z run just finished, and it came back a little bit more pessimistic. It only keeps this as a tropical wave as it continues to head westbound toward Honduras and Nicaragua. But nevertheless, this will be the main feature to watch, in addition to 92 and 94 heading off toward Bermuda. So, just to summarize, Tropical Storm Franklin is only a threat to shipping interests and should weaken fairly soon. Bermuda needs to be on the lookout for a potential tropical depression or tropical storm passing very close to you within the next 72 to 96 hours. And 93L Invest has little to no chance of developing within the first 3 to 5 days, so the Lesser Antilles really don't have anything to fear. And it may have some added potential as we get into the 5 to 7 day range as it makes it through the Central and Western Caribbean, but at this point it's so far out, and the models are only hinting at the possibility of development, so I would place the odds of that occurring at around 30% for right now. But we'll keep a close eye on all of these features out there, so keep a close watch to 28storms.com, and we'll have another video by tomorrow afternoon at the latest. So thanks again, and have a good weekend.